Kate Moody's in the House. Good evening to you, Kate. Great to see you. Michel Barnier's government collapsed last week. France is facing a situation more familiar to American lawmakers, the threat of a government shutdown. Kate.
Well, Mark, as in the United States, this is more of a looming possibility that we think is going to spur them into action anyway. But it is certainly a possibility. That's because the budget that the outgoing Prime Minister Michel Barnier tried to force through was one of the main reasons for that no confidence vote, which ultimately toppled his government. Now, while waiting for a new Prime Minister and ministers to be named and put forward their own spending plans for 2025, French lawmakers are being asked to approve a series of emergency financing laws. This Wednesday, that text was presented to the outgoing cabinet. Next week, France's National Assembly and Senate will each be asked to vote on those measures. The goal is to roll over current spending levels for exactly 1 month once they expire at the end of December. Any delay could leave the government and programs like Social Security without funding come January 1st.
A special bill, a single objective strictly determines its content. The aim is to ensure, on a transitional and exceptional basis, the continuity of the life of the nation, the regular operation of public services and the fulfillment of our commitments, in particular our financial commitments. It is a bill that, to put it simply in terms you have often used, aims to avoid a shutdown.
Well, despite the fractured political scene, it is expected that French lawmakers will approve this month-by-month funding. All taxes and spending would be frozen at current levels, with the exception of pensions, which are automatically linked to inflation. That means pensions would increase 2.2% from January at a cost of about €6.5 billion. All that means that France would continue down its current path of a rising deficit, 5.5% of GDP last year, 6.1% this, on track to rise still further in 2025. It is twice the EU target of 3% of members' GDP. And it's a situation that Emmanuel Macron has vowed to tackle somehow by the time he leaves office in 2027. Moving on, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has urged the private sector to invest more in Ukraine, saying it represents an investment in a future EU member state. He was speaking at a German-Ukrainian business forum in Berlin just a week after announcing a further €650 million in military aid for Kyiv. German trade with Ukraine has grown despite the war, from €8 billion in 2021 to nearly $10 billion in 2023, with some 2,000 German companies operating across the war-torn country. Well, before Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, Ukraine produced enough grain to feed some 400 million people around the world. Nearly 3 years into that conflict, farmers are now trying to boost production and exports again, but they're facing the colossal task of securing and demining their fields. Elitsa Gadeva has more.
Not far from the front line, Ukrainian farmers are clearing their land. They are working with the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization team that helps rural communities get rid of war debris polluting their soil.
The initial survey on demining began in 2023. Then the year after, we started the technical inspection of the fields. We have one field of 24 hectares in Luzy area. For now, we have cleared 15 hectares.
Before Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, Ukraine was one of the biggest wheat producers in the world, exporting 6 million tons of grain per month. Now, about 10% of its land is unusable because of landmines and discarded explosives. And although production is still far from pre-war levels, Ukrainian farmers are showing resilience.
I'm very impressed by the capacity of Ukrainian agriculture to respond to a very difficult crisis situation, which is being made worse, of course, by labor shortages, by high costs of energy, and very high logistic costs for transport, for insurance, and everything. FAO has been doing a huge amount of work here to support the resumption of full-scale agriculture.
The FAO warns it will be a long-term project. More than 10 million Ukrainians are said to live in areas where demining is necessary.
Well, your Christmas tree may be green, but is it sustainable? Whether real or artificial, the answer is probably not. In Mexico, where about half of Christmas trees are imported from the US or Canada, One farm owner is offering locals the chance to rent his fir trees for the season as an environmentally friendly alternative. Kemi Knight has more.
Christmas trees haven't always been a part of Mexican culture. They were first used in Germany 4 centuries ago before spreading across the world. Since the mid-1900s, they've been gaining popularity in Mexico, and farms have been popping up across the country. But unlike most Christmas tree businesses, Federico's farm doesn't cut the trees down. He grows them in a pot and then rents them.
The root develops in the pot, and it ends up being a tree of around 1.5 to 1.8 meters in height without having to uproot it.
It takes several years for a Christmas tree to mature before it's the ideal size to cut down. In this farm's case, the tree has a much longer lifespan.
We deliver and collect the fir trees to plant them back at the farm. Many of them recover in a period of 2 to 3 years when they are replanted.
The first 2 weeks of December are the busiest of the year. It's Ricardo's first time renting a tree. He found the farm on social media after watching a documentary about Christmas tree rentals.
It's not just for environmental reasons, but also because things are not disposable, and we shouldn't have to be constantly consuming. The fact that we can interact with a living element at home, and that it will continue to fulfill its function, I think is also a nice way of looking at it.
Mexico now produces hundreds of thousands of trees, but it still imports over 1 million per year, mostly from the US and Canada. Mexico is better known for its poinsettia plants during the Christmas season, exporting around 40 million cuttings every year.
Nice festive greenery there, Mark.
Rent a tree. I bet your tree's up already, isn't it? Mine's not yet there. We've got to get some baubles to decorate it, but we'll get there eventually. Kate, thank you very much indeed. Kate Moody then with all the business, and Kate will be back with more